Cari King. This is super cool. Many of you know Cari. We always see her up in the Pacific Northwest, is how I think of her. But she is a woman of many skills, not just a Touareg 660 rider, not just a She ADV student slash instructor. She is a martial arts instructor, self-defense instructor, founder of riseuppersonalprotection.com, and we are super pumped to have her tonight. So virtual round of applause. Cari's going to drop some serious wisdom on us tonight, ladies. This is really, really cool. Definitely throw your questions into that meeting chat because we've got time for Q&A at the end. If there is a question that's like super pertinent in that moment, it can't wait, I'll try and address it, but we've got Q&A time set aside. So definitely drop your questions in there because this presentation is just chock full of great information. So Cari, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thank you guys all for being here. This is super exciting for me. I started riding about 7 years ago. So motorcycles is actually kind of my second passion, but my first passion, which I began way back in college, something about 28 years ago, is martial arts and specifically women's self-defense and personal protection. So I've been studying martial arts for about 28 years. I spent about 3 years in law enforcement, and then I started teaching. And for me, kind of like with the instructors at She ADV, getting women to really understand the power that is within their own bodies and creating confidence within themselves and their physical capabilities is what really lights my fire. Okay. So for me to be able to put these two passions together is like a dream come true. So I thank you for that. I want to start by saying that there really is no one specific answer or one perfect move to a given situation. Okay. Every situation you're going to possibly encounter is going to be different. You're going to be in a different location. You might be with a riding buddy. You might be with your spouse or partner, or you might be alone. In our off motorcycle lives, right? You might be with your children. So the decisions you make in those moments are really going to depend on the given situation. So my hope is really to just impart a little bit of awareness and knowledge and give you some stuff to think about. Obviously on Zoom, it's hard to demonstrate a lot of the physical stuff, but I'm going to try and do my best at the end. I want to start by saying it used to be that statistically, and it actually still is statistically, that the people that are that usually hurt women, right, are the domestic violence situations, are usually people that we know or know us. However, unfortunately, the incidences of random attacks are starting to grow. A perfect example of that is right here in Bellingham, just north of me. About 2 months ago, a gal was running on a very popular trail in a very popular park in Bellingham. It was actually during a triathlon, and she got attacked as a trail runner during a triathlon, broad daylight. Okay, someone she didn't know. So that's kind of, although we could talk about the domestic violence situations ad nauseum, what I'm really talking about today is as you're traveling and you're most likely going to be alone or maybe with one buddy, okay, because there's stuff you can do as partners as well. But to start to think about how would you respond in situations from your bike, say at a gas station or a parking lot or something like that. So the first thing that I always jump into is understanding your awareness. Okay, your awareness is a skill. It really is. Just like when we're riding, learning how to be aware of the traffic around us and all the things we need to do, the road conditions, all that kind of stuff. When it comes to your personal protection, your awareness is another skill that we need to work to develop. Understanding your awareness helps you to identify a potential threat and either avoid or prepare yourself to defend against it. The first one is the white, okay? I'm unaware. I'm either asleep, or I like to say I'm in my bubble bath with my book and my doors are locked, so I don't have to worry about anything, okay? White can also be completely distracted. I'm in my phone looking at my Gaia or my Google Maps trying to figure out where I'm going, and I'm not aware of anything around me. Yellow is what I would consider your daily operational level. Okay, we should be here 90 to 95% of our day. I see the traffic around me. I know when to start, when to stop. I see people. There's no threats, but I am aware of my surroundings and my situation. The orange is the heightened alert. That's when your spidey senses start to pick up. That's when your gut feeling starts to kick in. You probably have not identified what's wrong or what the threat is. You just know that something right now near you isn't right. Okay. And this is where your intuition comes in, and this is where you need to really be listening. The red is the danger, right? Take action, fight or flight kind of thing. So red is when you're in the midst of it. But that taking action can be something as simple as crossing the street. Okay. You identified the threat, you crossed the street. You identified the threat, you hit the throttle and got the heck out of there. Okay. It doesn't necessarily mean you're hand to hand fighting with someone. It just means you've taken action to avoid the danger. And then black is that panic state. A lot of us have heard the term frozen in fear. Okay. I was fully conscious and aware of what was going on, but my body just couldn't respond. And that's where we don't want to be. So we don't want to be white. We don't want to be black. We always want to be somewhere in the middle of that. Okay. Next. So using your intuition, okay, listening. The definition of intuition is knowing or sensing something without the use of rational process or thought. It's your gut feeling. Okay, it's not rational. It's not, well, I knew, okay? It is something's wrong and I've got to listen to it. I get the spidey senses. My shoulders start to come up. I start to get into myself and go, something's weird and I need to figure it out. If you have not heard of or ever read the book, The Gift of Fear by Gavin de Becker, I cannot recommend this enough. He interviews a large handful of people who have been victimized, all women, and basically asks them, what was it that saved your life? What was it in your intuition that got you out of that situation? Okay. And some of the stories are fairly horrific, but it's a real eye-opener of not just how bad things can get, but how when we listen to ourselves and really dig down and know deeply what the timing is we need, we can still save ourselves. And the one thing that Gavin says, and to anybody who's ever been a victim that I will say as well, thanks to him, is that no matter what, you did everything right because you're here with us today. Okay. Too often it's easy to Monday morning quarterback and second guess and all that kind of stuff. We never second guess. If you're here with us today, your intuition kicked in and you did everything right. And then we can talk about what is fear? What is true fear? So for me, I would say, okay, well, I'm afraid of drowning, but if there isn't a body of water next to me, that's more of a worry than a fear because there's no way for me to drown right now. True fear is always a response to something you perceive in your environment, and it's immediate. You sense it, you see it, you hear it, you smell it, you feel it, even if you can't identify it. You listen to that fear, okay? So I'm walking down the trail and a stick breaks and I go, that's a moment of true fear because it happened right now and I sensed it in my environment immediately. It's not a fear of something that could happen tomorrow necessarily. So when we're talking about personal protection, intuition, and that kind of fear, it's something that happens right now in the moment. Gavin de Becker also has on YouTube, it's called the Gift of Fear Masterclass. Basically, he's sitting down and interviewing. There's 6 or 7 different sessions, and I'll download them like a podcast and just listen to them over and over and over. And the wisdom that you get from some of these people's stories and what they did, what they went through, and then how they were able to survive, it's fascinating and it's valuable. Okay. The word no. Again, this comes from Gavin de Becker in The Gift of Fear. No is a complete sentence. It should be respected and leave no room for explanation. Okay. We're not saying no, like, no, I don't want another cup of coffee. This is with intent. You've said no for a reason. It is not open for negotiation. Do not back down from your no. Learn to say it with intent. And when I teach my personal classes, I say, use your mom voice, right? So I'm not just to say, no, no, thank you. It's more like if you're a mom, or if you remember your mom or your grandma, and they gave you the eyebrow and the stare down when they told you, no, you're not going to do that. You'd be amazed how quickly that stops someone in their tracks. I used to say, scream loud, say no really loud. Well, some people just can't project their voices like that. But if you say it with intent, you get that point across. Don't be afraid to be loud and draw attention to yourself. That's always going to be a good thing, because most attackers, especially these random attackers, right? They don't want attention. They want things to go quietly because that makes it easy for them. Your job is to not make it easy and not be quiet. Okay. So some of the most dangerous places for us, especially on our motorcycles, in cars too, but particularly on our motorcycles, are what we call the transition zones. So those transition zones, the whole gas station. So anytime we pull in to fuel up and get off our bikes, that whole area is a transition zone, right? Vehicles are coming and going, people are in and out of their vehicles. But also when we park our bike in front of a restaurant to go into that restaurant. So from your bike to the door of the restaurant, from your bike to the door of the hotel, okay? Those are the transition zones. Those are the zones when, most of the time we're not as attentive as we should be to our surroundings, especially once we've parked, right? We're getting off, we're getting our helmets off, we're getting our phone out, we're getting our purse out, we're doing all this stuff. But we need to take a minute to look around and really assess our environment before focusing back in all of our stuff, right? So working on that skill of your awareness levels in those transition zones, okay?
This is so cool. When we were talking about this the other day, it's like that idea too, that there's an instability there. Like you're changing from one mode of being into another mode of being, even thinking like if you're traveling on your motorcycle, like that's the time when you're getting off your bike. Maybe your kickstand isn't down. Maybe you're rearranging your luggage. I just think it's so interesting to think about that, because we always so often are like, you're either at point A or you're at point B, you know?
Right. And Shal talks about spidey eyes in training, right? When we're looking around at our, at the gravel, at the road conditions, all that kind of stuff. This is a time where we've got to change those spidey eyes to be looking around at our environment. And like you said, especially when we're initially pulling into park and that bike is a little wobbly, okay, I want to make sure that, just like I don't want to park in a hole and put my kickstand down in a hole, right? Because then I'm toppling over. So before I have that moment of instability, I make sure that my environment is safe.
So true.
All right. So a lot of motorcyclists know dab, right? We put our foot down. Okay. For me, dab is distance, angles, and barriers. She who controls the distance controls the fight. So close-ish is safer-ish, okay? Medium being arm's length to about 20 feet, not safe, because that's the grab zone and the strike zone. Far, 20, 30 feet or more, that's your safe zone. So why would being close be safe? This is really weird. This is the hardest thing to teach and understand, because our instinct is always to pull away and to get away, okay? But I'm never going to win, especially against most males, and I'm strong and I work out, but I am not going to win the muscle versus muscle battle. So if I'm grabbed and I try to pull away, most likely he's expecting that, number one, and number two, I'm just not going to win that muscle battle. However, if I come inside his bubble, okay, inside that strike zone being his arms, he's not going to expect it. And from there, I have my tools available, meaning my strikes, my kicks, all those kinds of things that I can use to help me get away. So typically, man versus man in a bar fight, right? They want to throw punches. And that's very, especially in our culture, that's very natural. However, a man attacking a woman, and we're making generalizations here, but a man attacking a woman is usually going to be a grab and control situation. So again, if I'm grabbed and he's trying to control me, whether it's give me something, trying to pull me away, okay, if I'm trying to pull back, he's expecting it. So he's just going to use that muscle and drag me to wherever he wants. If he grabs and I step inside with a strike, he's not expecting that. And now I've got him off kilter. So that is one of the first things I try to teach in my personal self-defense classes is you've got to step in order to make anything we want to do physically effective for us. So that's our distancing. Moving in angles, zigzags, weaves, turning corners makes yourself harder to follow, which makes you harder to grab and harder to hit and get. Okay, so not just running in a straight line, but run around the back of your bike, run around that gas pump, okay? Run around this car and then that car. And then keeping a barrier between you and them to make yourself harder to reach. Your bike is a great barrier and it provides 6, 8, depending on the size of your bike, maybe 10 feet of length between you and them, using the gas pump, using another car. So anything you can use to keep between you and them, it's going to make you harder to reach, harder to get to, and buy you time. Because in our case, time is of the essence. We need time in order to establish a plan, in order to find an escape route, and then to get away. So anything we can do to buy time. Distance, angles, and barriers. Okay?
Cool. So cool. I love it. I love this. I don't know how many of you saw the Instagram reel that we put up as a little promo for this. And it's Cari and one of her martial arts instructors. And like she's getting off her bike and doing whatever. And like here comes this guy at her. And the first thing she does is move around to the other side of the motorcycle. And this is exactly that. Like that's what you were doing. Getting something in between you and the perceived threat.
Yeah.
So cool.
And part of that too is I'm establishing intent, right? Maybe he's just coming up to ask directions.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I want him in my bubble, right? I can have a conversation about that from 6 feet away. I don't need to have it within 2 to 3 feet, okay? So I can establish those intentions, keep him at a distance until I know it's safe. And then if I choose to go closer, then that's my decision, not his, to invade my bubble. So, all right. So moving on to gear, right? In our normal daily lives, we can wear yoga pants and tennis shoes and t-shirts, and all of that is super easy and mobile to move around in. I'm pretty darn fast when I'm in my yoga pants and my tennis shoes, okay? But I go and put my riding boots, my riding pants, my riding jacket, my helmet on. Now I have pretty restrictive gear on, as well as heavy and sweaty, that now limits my ability to be quick, to be agile. And when I'm going through this, understand, I'm not giving up my protective riding gear so that I can fight, okay? But it's things to be aware of so that I know I may not be able to run away in my heavy off-road boots. Running may not be an option, so I might have to stand and fight, okay? So when you ride, do you wear earplugs or earbuds? Do you listen to music in your helmet? Understand that this limits your actually number 2 sense, number 1 being your sight, but your number 2 sense of hearing, right? So when you pull into the gas pumps, do you turn your music off? Okay. Before I even pull into the gas station, I know I'm going to get gas. I'm turning my music down as far as I can, so that that sense of hearing now is more available to me. Do you take your helmet off when fueling up? Or if you've got a flip up visor, do you flip up your visor? Again, there's no right or wrong answer to this, okay? It's just stuff to think about. If I'm going to be there for a little while, yeah, I'll take my helmet off because I want to have all of my visual field and my hearing available to me. If all I'm doing is filling up and getting out of there, I'm still going to flip my visor up so I have more of a visual field. Gloves are great protection, but sometimes they do limit, and these fingers right here are my number 1 tool when I go to strike. Okay, so gloves may dampen the effectiveness of that strike. Just something to be aware of. Boots, like I said, super solid. They're going to have an impact if I'm able to kick with them, but really bad for running in. I don't know if you've ever tried running in your moto boots, but it sucks. Jackets and pants, they're heavy, they decrease your mobility. And another thing that we don't think about a lot is that heavy fabric, and especially if you have like molly straps or anything like that on your jackets, they create really good grab points. Okay. Sean and I have done a little exercise where he grabs my jacket and see if I can wiggle out of his grip. With a little bit of effort, I can, but it's a lot, it's effort. So again, things to be aware of. And then lastly, I'm a huge fan of emergency satellite communication aids, your Garmin InReach, Spot, Zoleo. Okay, we think of them a lot as just being for when I'm out in the woods and I've broken a leg and I need a helicopter to come get me. But when I went out to Wyoming last year, there were a lot of dead spots out there, even off of the highways, as I was trying to get down to the start of where we were meeting to do the BDR. And I was really happy I had that. Coming back, because our trip ended a little soon, I actually ended up using my Zoleo to text my friend because the winds were so high, I didn't feel comfortable riding. So I pulled over, but I had no cell service, but I was able to use my satellite communication to get her to come pick me up and get help. So it's not just for those dire back in the backwoods situations. Big fan of any kind of communication systems you choose to carry. And I carry it with me on most rides. Okay, so now we're going to get into, this is actually one of my favorite topics, and one of the topics that gets the most questions is weapons and pepper spray. Okay, anything you have on you can be used as a weapons. Weapons are not just guns and knives. Okay, a weapon can be a water bottle, right? Most of us carry some sort of water bottle in our daily lives. These big, heavy aluminum things make a great baseball pack. That's a really good impact weapon. My other favorite tool is my tactical pen. Okay, this isn't your normal pen. This is an airline grade aluminum pen with some grippy on it here, a really sharp point on that end, and it also writes really well as a pen. I say that because although you can't take your 4-inch scissors on the airplanes, this goes through TSA and you can take it on an airplane. Okay, so it's a nice pokey impact weapon. And something as simple and benign as a magazine can also be turned into an impact weapon or a baseball bat. So just looking at some of those things that you might have carry in your tail pack or in your tank bag, or if you carry that knife on your hip, okay, all those things can be used as some sort of an impact tool to help defend yourself. Now, saying all of that, if you choose to carry a weapon or a tool, even and especially pepper spray, understand how it works, how to use it, and that this tool can also be taken away from you and used against you. Okay. Pepper spray is one of my soapboxes because most people don't truly understand how it works and its effectiveness. So number one, if you're a pepper spray carrier, and I usually ask people to actually answer these questions for me, do you know how far it sprays? So you'll get on Amazon and it'll say sprays 16-foot stream. Okay, that sounds really cool until you realize how close 16 feet really is. And then usually the last 2 feet of that stream that you're spraying are a dribble. So you're really looking at about 14 feet, not 16 feet. Now that person's 2 feet closer to you. The other thing you really need to understand is expiration. Pepper spray has a CO2 propellant inside of it. And after about 2 years, usually that's expired. So you don't want to pull that out, think you're going to use it. You push the button and it drips down your hand because the CO2 is dead inside of it. So if you're going to do pepper spray, get on Amazon. Almost all of them are sold in a 2-pack. Take one of those out to your backyard. Find your favorite tree or your least favorite tree. See how far that stream actually sprays. Okay. Make sure you feel you can be accurate with it. One of the things I was surprised with in one of the packs I bought was how much pressure it actually took to depress the button to get it to spray. If I had been in a situation and I would have been doing this a couple of times trying to get it to spray without realizing just how hard I needed to depress it. And then the other thing is exposure. If you've never been exposed to something like pepper spray or mace, pepper spray itself is completely organic. Okay, it's not going to physically damage you. However, it does shut down your systems to a degree. So your eyes are blinking so much that you can't open them and can't see. You're snotting, you're coughing, you may even be puking if you take a full exposure. Ask me how I know. I've done it. That's part of law enforcement training, is to take a full exposure. But the other part of that is knowing that you can fight through that too. So I'm not saying spray yourself in the face, but you may inhale a little bit just so you understand what it feels like and know that, okay, this is how my body reacts, but I can still function through this if I need to fight. Okay. And I will tell you, 100% of law enforcement officers that have ever deployed pepper spray on a subject have been exposed. So if you're going to use it, understand that you will be exposed to some degree. Okay, that may be blowback because the wind direction's wrong. It may be because you were so close that you got, it bounced off them and got back to you. That happens a lot. If you carry a knife, practice pulling it out of your pocket and deploying it. Okay, just as if you're a firearms carrier, you feel the need to go to the range and practice shooting your gun. Okay, any other tool or what you might consider a weapon, you need to practice with, plain and simple. Okay.
So if you don't, if you're not practiced with like in your face knife fighting, does that mean you should just not carry a knife at all? Or
Practice, you can still practice deploying it, right? So if you, for instance, I carry my knife on my left, in my left pocket. Now I'm right-handed, but I carry my knife in my left pocket because most of the time, my right side being strong side is probably going to be the one that's up. And or when I carry my gun, okay, I need my right hand to draw my gun. So if if somebody's attacking me and they're trying to go for my gun and I'm protecting my gun with my right hand, I still have access to my knife with my left. So it's not necessarily that you need to train knife fighting, it's that you need to practice effectively pulling it out of your pocket, making sure you can open it so that you're not fumbling around with two hands, right? Trying to flip it open.
sure. Or even the idea of, like you mentioned, a water bottle earlier. And ladies, drop those questions into the chat. I figure we're getting into some more practical stuff here. So if you have any questions, definitely pop them over there. But like you mentioned, even like grabbing your water bottle and now you have something hard in your hand. Do you recommend that, even if it's like, well, I don't know, I've never picked up my water bottle and practiced smashing it.
Right.
Like, right. Like,
So
how much do you want to leave the tools out of your hands so that you have your hands available versus?
exactly. And that's where there is no one right answer, right? So I might have my tail pack open, my hand inside my tail pack on my water bottle in case I need to pull it out. Now, I'm not going to pull it out and say, all right, I'm going to smash you over the head and be ready to go, because that actually shows me as the aggressor, which I don't want to be. But I can have my hand on this water bottle and be prepared to, maybe all I do is throw it at them, which is a distraction, right? Which gives me a moment to then do something else, turn and run, scream, whatever it is. So it's not so much that you practice with it, you just practice getting in position. Okay, I know where my water bottle is at, my tail pack's open. I'm standing here gauging the intent, figuring out what needs to go on. Okay. So it's those kinds of things. It's more of the preparatory side, right? Figuring out what would I do if things. So
That super cool.
all right, physical skills. let me holler at my assistant real quick. All right, on the way, getting set up. All right, so am I looking good here on my mark?
You look good.
Okay.
So
So,
any class we teach, she's always goes over a little bit.
so the first thing that I teach in class is hands up. These hands are your airbag, okay? So if somebody took a water bottle, for instance, or a basketball and threw it at your face, what would your hands do? Your hands would come up and protect your face, right? So anytime somebody approaches me, the first thing I'm gonna do is put my hands up. Right here, like I was talking about before, I'm gauging intent. The other thing this does is it protects all of my vitals. It protects my airway, my vision, my throat, my heart, okay? So my hands are up and they're centered. The other part of this, again, is body language, right? So if I'm going, step back, don't come near me, my body language is saying, I'm ready to fight you. But if I say, step back, please don't come near me, my body language is saying something else, okay? Supplicative, but ready to go. And when I said earlier, these fingers are my #1 weapon. They're here, they're ready to strike, right? So fingers to the eyes, pretty darn quick. Plus I get the palm to the nose. So I never teach in my self-defense classes a closed fist punch because it's too easy to break all those little bitty bones. But when we're striking soft eyes or soft nose here, most likely, most of the damage is going to be on him, a lot less to me. So the next thing we need to talk about is when he does invade my bubble, okay? So my bubble being my arm's reach right here, he gets inside that bubble. Most people are going to stop, go and step in.
Oh.
No, just step in. Most people are going to go here to the chest, okay? What happens then is look at the length of his arm to the length of my arms. His arms are longer than mine. However, if I come to the biceps and I'm talking the crease of the elbow to the shoulder, so literally my hands on his biceps, right here. Now look at the length of his arms. I've effectively shortened his reach, okay? So hands are up. If they invade that bubble and you need to go hands on, you go hands to biceps, not hands to the chest. I also then have more control. The big part of that being, again, I'm not strong enough to bench press this 200-something pound guy off of me. So if my hands are on his chest, so he steps in, my hands are on his chest, and he compresses me, okay, I can't push him off. I'm just not strong enough. However, if he steps in and I go hands to biceps, and I'm locked out, so stop pushing.
Yep.
Just right there. My elbows are locked, so I have bony support, and you guys can't see it, but my leg is stretched out behind me at a 45-degree angle, and my knee is locked out. So now I have a strong base to hold up that weight as he's trying to come in and grab.
And hopefully you saw the amount of pressure I was putting on her. Like literally I could smack the crap out of her when she had my arms, but when she had it out here,
He really can't
I'm
reach his
trying.
Okay. So I'm not going to play that game for very long, and there are moves and angles that I'm going to use to get out of that. We're not going to dance like that for very long. I'm going to get myself away, but that's the basics right there, is not going to the chest, but going to the biceps, starting with those hands up, getting yourself in a good, I don't know if you can see my legs, in a good deep base there.
Chin would be.
And then, yeah, so are you guys okay if I demonstrate a couple more little quickies?
You're doing great. Yeah, this is
Okay.
awesome.
Okay, good for time. So a couple of quick ones that I love to demonstrate is the strength of the neck. Before just a little bit. So if you think of the neck as being on a hinge that's like a bowl, if he's like this, he's really, really strong, okay? So push down. I can't extend his neck. However, if I can catch that before he tucks his chin and push his head up, this starts to push him off balance and he cannot come back down into my hand, okay? And you can try that on yourself, you can try it with the buddy, right? So have your husband or your friend tuck their chin, try to push it up, okay? I'm pretty strong. But as soon as my head goes past that tipping point, now my balance is off. And I can't rewrite myself. We're not strong from here to here. We're only strong from here to here.
You watch Olympic divers, the body follows the head.
Yep. So, and then understand that I can run faster forward than he can backwards. So come here, I'm looking at the screen, there we go. So if I catch him here,
Go from the arms to this.
if I catch him here and I start pushing back and I'm literally running, okay, he can't right himself and he can't balance himself. I'm being nice also because I'm in my downstairs and we have a limited screen view. But that's one of the main concepts I like to teach is if you get stuck inside, if you can get those palms under the chin, like you see in the picture on the bottom right there, get those palms under the chin and push that head up and away, the head tilts back, and it doesn't matter how big and strong he is, he can't right himself.
It's true.
He's experienced it more than once.
I was amazed by it.
And then, of course, our kicks. The easiest is to kick to the knee or the shin or the top of the foot, okay? I don't ever really teach a kick or a knee to the groin because for 50 years now, this guy has been training himself to protect that area of his body, and he expects that, okay? The other thing is the higher my foot comes off the ground, if I kick, the more off balance I become. So I don't want to spend any more time than necessary on one foot. I would like to keep both feet on the ground. So if I'm gonna kick, it's gonna be to a lower target to where I can maintain my base as quickly as possible. If you happen to trip or get tripped or get pushed and fall down on your back, get those feet up between you and the opponent and start to bicycle kick, okay? If you remember Jane Fonda, one of her favorite exercises for the core was that bicycle kick, okay? You start throwing those feet, nobody's gonna wanna come in and grab those. And I could go on with the physical stuff all day long, because that really is my favorite.
It's so
And if
cool.
there's-
It's so cool. We've got time for one more. If you want to give us one more little back pocket
Okay,
trick.
here.
Which style of hair grab?
So we're just gonna do the front. Okay,
Straight.
so hair grabs. And this goes for a helmet as well, right? So if you're wearing a helmet that has the visor on it and that visor gets grabbed.
It makes it easy to grab with it. Oh,
So without my hands, he can pretty much yank my head around and push me and pull me wherever he wants me. Because again, where the head goes, the body will follow, okay? My neck is weak. His arms are very strong. So the first thing I'm gonna do is pin that hand to my head, okay? Now, instead of yanking me around by my neck, I'm still being yanked around and moved, but my neck is no longer being pushed and pulled and yanked around. I've got control over my head. So from here, now I can start to figure out what I need to do. Do I need to kick him in the shin? Can I release quickly and jab him in the eyes? Something like that, okay? But if you get somebody that grabs you by the head and you start getting yanked around, it's not too long before you have whiplash or you're being drugged
or thrown to the
or
ground.
thrown to the ground. So the first thing I need to do is control my own head. So yeah, that hair, helmets, all that kind of stuff.
The quick get out.
Hmm?
The drop and move.
No, we're not gonna go there.
Okay.
Yep, so.
So then we'll go down with two.
Yeah,
That's for part two.
that's for part two.
Self-defense class part two. I feel like, Cari, we've talked about this like forever, it seems like. like to have in-person classes of this stuff,
Mhm.
whether we do it at Tour Tech next year, or we do it at Tour Texas, if you can make it down, or whatever time
Yeah.
you can connect up out there in some of the events. I just think this is just so good for people to not live in fear, but basically just have some tips and tricks in our back pocket
Yep.
if something were to go awry. So cool, all of this stuff, and it's so
Yep.
super informative, just so cool. You've dropped a couple of resources in here as well for us.
Yeah. So if you're looking, because of course I'm in the Pacific Northwest, actually up north of Seattle. So if you're up this way, anywhere along the I-5 corridor, I am happy to travel. I have gear, will travel. Otherwise, a lot of what I teach comes from the Gracie Women Empowered program. So the Gracie family are the ones that kind of brought jujitsu to the United States and have blown it up through mixed martial arts and all of that. But they've also developed a very well laid out women's self-defense program based around jujitsu. I've kind of taken my own spin on some of that. But if you want to see more, gracieuniversity.com. They're also on YouTube at Women Empowered Live on YouTube. And if you're in a larger metropolitan area, so like, for instance, the Seattle area, I know Houston, down in Florida, a lot of places, the bigger places have a lot of Gracie certified training centers. And a couple of times a year, those training centers will offer a 2 to 3 hour course for free. All you have to do is look it up and sign up for them. The other thing you can do is contact your local police departments and or your local shooting ranges, okay? And it's not necessarily all about guns. So my local shooting range, they offer a whole variety of personal protection options. One of those is they have contracted with me to teach non-weapons-based women's self-defense because they realize that not every woman walking in wants to carry a gun. Maybe their husbands are part of the range and their husbands come in and shoot, but the wife doesn't want to. Or maybe their teenage daughter, right, who's not even old enough, but they can sign their daughters up for this class. So even though you may not be into the firearms scene, those are great resources because they are still all about helping you find personal protection options. Okay.
So cool.
And
So cool.
then,
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
as I say, like Eva was asking earlier about various martial arts. So a lot of times if you Google self-defense, you're going to get a jujitsu school, a taekwondo school, a karate school. There is no one best martial art per se, because again, out on the street, everything is different, right? Jujitsu is very ground-based, but if I don't have to go to the ground, I'm not going to, okay? I know how to fight from the ground, but I'd rather stay on my feet. So if you're not interested in committing yourself to studying a given martial art, then trying to find something that's more essentially one-off based is your best option. And that's why I began my company of Rise Up Personal Protection, is because not everybody wants to study a martial art. They just want to learn self-defense. And there's so much more to self-defense than just jujitsu or just Krav Maga or karate or something like that. So
I love that. That's awesome. Not a ton of questions because you are just dropping so much information, but somebody did ask, where was it? It was Brenda Medina. She asked, are whistles good to keep on you and or use if looking to draw attention to a situation?
yes, whistles, and there's also something out there that's called the personal alarm. So it's basically, it looks like a little key fob, but it sounds like a super loud car alarm. So if you want to listen to that. But yeah, whistles are great because anything's going to turn a head, right? But again, you've got to be prepared with that. So if it's in your pocket or in your purse or your backpack and it's not available to you in that moment, so you've got anything like that, you have to have available and ready to use.
That's awesome. Yeah, some lots of props over here in the chat going on. Great info from Kat. Kim agrees. Olivia's got a question. Have you heard of tasers as a weapon? And do you recommend?
Yes. So also part of law enforcement, I have been tased. I know what that feels like. Okay. So there are two varieties. You've got the Taser brand, which shoots out two barbs to about a distance of 15 feet. Those two barbs have to connect usually somewhere on the thoracic cavity in a diagonal pattern. That shuts down the musculoskeletal system. Okay, basically go stiff as a board. Now, the other thing that people think a lot about is the stun gun. Okay, so your stun guns are a contact weapon. Well, in order to make contact, I got to be inside that bubble. So I'm not a big fan of stun guns because I have to be literally touching someone with my hand in order to use it. For me, that's too close. If I'm going to be that close inside, I'm just going to be using my fingers and striking. Tasers, the hard thing with tasers is that they're basically a one-off shot. And so it's really expensive to practice with them. And they're about $600 to $800. So they cost sometimes more than a firearm itself. And then each cartridge is a couple $100 to replace. So that's
Awesome.
the deal with tasers and stun guns.
Yeah. It's interesting. I mean, it's like so often, I don't know, I guess I just think like when you're in a bind, you're going to use what's most instinctual right there. So if you have some obscure tool where you're like, I should have a taser, whatever, like you're gonna fall back on instinct. So that's why these classes and this kind of training that you're providing is so good. I've got one more because I love this stuff. It's so interesting. And if anybody has any more questions, drop them in there because we've got a couple more minutes. So I was thinking about that Instagram reel that you showed us, and check that out, ladies, if you haven't seen that yet. Your first move, you come around the bike, and I know you were being dramatic for real, but you immediately go into like your hands are up and you immediately go into this position, like kind of being assuming, like, okay, this guy seems like he's coming at me. I'm gonna put my hands up and go around the back of the bike. At what point, like would that feel provoking to somebody versus trying to play it casual? And like when do you feel like you go into like fight mode versus like, let me just chill and watch how this plays out kind of?
So it's all about gauging intent, using your words and asking questions, right? So like I said earlier, maybe he's just asking for directions. Okay, cool. Then we'll have that discussion about directions. But if he's approaching me, and again, I'm looking at his body language, I'm reading what's going on, I'm reading the environment. We're at a gas station, it's later in the evening, I'm by myself, there's nobody else around, and this strange guy is approaching me. I'm going to be a little bit more on the defensive. Now, if I just saw this guy get out of his car and I see his family in the car, okay, I'm probably not going to be as defensive. So it's all about reading that situation. Like you said, I was being dramatic in that. And if I could go back a minute, I forgot to tell Shell's story. So she and I were talking about the sit tour attack, and it's about using your intuition and listening to your intuition. So she was on a ride with one of her best friends, Steph. She was telling me this story, and they pulled into a gas station, and there are these two guys sitting on a bench or a wall or something like that. They literally pulled in, stopped, looked at each other, and pulled right out again. They didn't say anything to each other. They just looked at each other and kept going. Stopped a couple miles down the road and looked at each other and said, did those dudes make you feel really weird? Yeah, they made me feel really weird too. I'm glad we both got out of there. Okay. So just that moment of them listening to what was going on inside of them, looking at each other and connecting and having that same feeling and making the decision to leave. Okay. Don't ever second guess that intuition. Don't ever second guess that decision. Okay. A lot of times we're in a hurry, like, well, I don't know if there's another gas station down the way. I need to get gas. I got to stop. I'm on a timeline, whatever. If that intuition kicks in, so go another half mile down the street, stop, recollect yourself, figure out what you need to figure out. But in that moment, if something's telling you to get the heck out of there, you get the heck out of there. Okay. And they did. That was just an awesome story she told me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is the perfect example of listening to your intuition.
That is so awesome. Cari, thank you so much. This is definitely not the last time we would have you as a part of this. I mean, that's my own personal
Yeah.
I just find this stuff so fascinating, so interesting. Thank you so much for sharing all of this, and I hope everybody jumps over and checks out Cari's website, and that we can do some more of this stuff because it's really interesting. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us and your skills.
Yes.
We've all got our spidey eyes on from here on out. So cool.